Hey there, news junkies, and welcome back to the Videntis podcast. The show where we go beyond just the headlines and really get into the stories that matter. It's Friday, January 17th, 2025, and the news cycle is, well, it's doing what the news cycle does best, churning away. Today, we're looking at some international intrigue, some domestic political standoffs, and a debate about rights and representation that's really front and center. So get ready, because we're diving deep into three stories that have really grabbed our attention. First up, let's rewind a bit. Remember when Donald Trump wanted to buy Greenland? Well, it seems the Trump family hasn't quite let that idea melt away. Donald Trump Jr. recently took a trip up to Greenland hoping to, drum up support for the idea, but things didn't exactly go as planned.
What's fascinating is that Trump Jr. went over there claiming that Greenland loves America and loves Trump. However, reports from Danish media are painting a picture that's, well, let's just say it's a bit different.
Yeah, there are some pretty serious allegations coming out. They're saying that Trump Jr.'s team offered homeless individuals luxury hotel stays, fancy meals, and even those Make America Great Again hats. The catch: they allegedly wanted these people to pose as Trump supporters for photo ops.
Wow, if true, that's pretty concerning. It really raises some questions about how far some political campaigns are willing to go to create a certain image. And it definitely brings up concerns about the potential exploitation of vulnerable populations for political gain.
Absolutely. In fact, Baja Chemnitz, a Greenlandic member of the Danish parliament, recognized some of the individuals from those photos and called the whole situation cynical. This story really makes you think about the power of images in politics and the importance of looking beyond what's presented at face value. Okay, so let's shift gears now from international relations to a little drama unfolding in the U.S. political scene. The Minnesota House of Representatives is completely deadlocked, a 67-67 split between Democrats and Republicans.
That kind of perfect split is incredibly rare. It's only happened twice in Minnesota's history.
Wow, can you imagine the tension in that chamber? Every single vote, every committee assignment, it all has to be negotiated.
Absolutely. It's unprecedented. You're right about the tension. It's palpable. Both parties have to appoint co-chairs for every committee. And get this, they have to figure out how to share the speaker's gavel. Now the state constitution says only one person can hold that gavel, so things could get very interesting.
It sounds like a political thriller just waiting to happen.
Oh, there's definitely potential for some serious drama. This happened once before, back in 1979. And, let's just say it didn't exactly end smoothly. That session ended in a pretty intense standoff, so everyone's hoping for a more cooperative outcome this time.
Well, it'll be fascinating to see how this impacts the legislative process, especially with Democrats controlling the Senate and the governorship in Minnesota.
For sure. The split house could really throw a wrench into their plans and make passing new laws a whole lot harder.
All right, so for our final deep dive today, we're going to tackle a story that's sparking a lot of debate, and rightfully so. It involves transgender rights and a proposed bathroom ban in the U.S. Capitol building.
This proposed ban comes at a particularly interesting time as Sarah McBride, the first openly transgender person elected to Congress, is about to take office.
The timing is definitely noteworthy. Representative Nancy Mace, the sponsor of the bill, has stated that the ban is specifically aimed at McBride and seeks to protect biological women's spaces.
This situation really highlights a concerning trend we're seeing across the country, this wave of anti-trans legislation that's popping up everywhere, particularly legislation that focuses on restricting bathroom access and participation in youth sports.
The numbers are pretty staggering. In 2024 alone, over 665 anti-trans bills were introduced across the U.S., and a recent study found that 90% of LGBTQ young people report being negatively impacted by this kind of political rhetoric.
It's crucial to remember that these aren't just abstract political battles happening in some far-off legislative chamber. These bills have real consequences for real people, impacting their lives and well-being in profound ways.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all the political back and forth and forget that these issues, they really affect people's lives.
Exactly. We're talking about people's lives, their sense of safety, their very identities. This story about the bathroom ban, it really hits home because it forces us to confront the discrimination and prejudice that transgender individuals still face every day. And we can't forget this isn't happening in a vacuum.
Right. This bathroom ban seems to be part of a much bigger pattern. We've seen a surge in legislation trying to limit the rights of transgender people all across the board.
It's not just bathrooms. We're seeing bills about healthcare participation in sports, you name it.
And it's really alarming when you look at the impact on transgender youth. Studies are showing a direct link between this hostile political climate and higher rates of suicide attempts among transgender and non-binary youth. That's just heartbreaking. It's a stark reminder of the real-world consequences of these political battles. So where do we go from here? What are the big takeaways from these three stories?
Well, on the surface, they might seem like totally separate events, but when you dig a little deeper, you start to see some interesting connections.
I'm listening.
Think about the Greenland story and the allegations about Trump Jr.'s team trying to manipulate perceptions. It really highlights the power of narratives and how far some people will go to control them.
That's a great point. It makes you wonder, how often are we being shown a carefully constructed image that doesn't actually reflect reality?
Exactly. And this ties into the situation in Minnesota as well.
How so?
Well, with the House of Representatives split right down the middle, the stakes are incredibly high for both parties. The way they choose to frame the issues, the stories they tell it, could have a huge impact on what laws actually get passed.
So it's all about persuasion.
To a large extent, yes. And then with the bathroom ban, we see how narratives can be used to target specific groups and try to justify discriminatory policies.
It's often about framing an issue in a way that preys on people's fears or prejudices.
You hit the nail on the head.
So it seems like what we're seeing here across all three stories is this struggle over representation and who gets to define the narrative. In Greenland, it's about projecting an image of support that may not actually be there. In Minnesota, it's about the two parties fighting for control of the narrative and ultimately control of the legislature. And in the bathroom ban, it's about using a narrative of fear and exclusion to target a specific group of people.
And this battle over narratives, it's not just limited to these three stories. It's happening everywhere all around us in big ways and small ways.
So how do we as informed citizens navigate this complex world of competing narratives?
That's the million-dollar question. I think it starts with understanding that every story has multiple sides and being willing to listen to different perspectives, even the ones we don't agree with.
And it's about questioning the narratives we're being presented with.
Exactly. Don't just take things at face value.
Yeah.
Dig a little deeper, ask some questions, think about the source of the information you're getting.
We have to be critical thinkers, especially in the age of social media where misinformation can spread so quickly.
I couldn't agree more. And we also can't forget that behind every story, behind every statistic, there are real people with real lives.
Right, we can't lose sight of the human impact of these issues. These aren't just abstract political debates. They have a real impact on people's rights, their safety, their dignity.
And that's something we should never forget.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the key things our listeners should take away from this?
Well, I think it's clear that we're living in a time of really intense political and social change. And the battles over narratives, over representation, those are only going to get more heated.
It's more important than ever to stay informed, stay engaged, and be critical of the information we're consuming.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And don't be afraid to ask questions, challenge assumptions, and speak up for what you believe in.
We all have a role to play in shaping the world we want to live in.
Now that's a powerful message to leave on.
So what stood out to you? What questions do you have? We always want to hear what you're thinking. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Well, that was quite a journey, wasn't it? We covered some serious ground today, from Greenland all the way to Minnesota and right into the heart of Congress.
Yeah, for sure. And we touched on some pretty big themes too. Power manipulation, representation, the fight for rights. It's a lot.
It is a lot to process, but that's what we're all about here on the Videntis podcast.
Yeah.
We like to dive deep, unpack the complexities, and try to make sense of it all.
Exactly. And hopefully we give our listeners the tools they need to kind of navigate this crazy world we live in, right?
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, as the saying goes.
And with great power comes great responsibility.
You got it. So as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave our listeners with a few thoughts. First off, never underestimate the power of your own voice. Whether it's through voting, speaking out against injustice, or even just having those tough conversations with friends and family, your voice truly does make a difference. Yeah, every little action we take can have a ripple effect and contribute to change, even if it doesn't seem like much in the moment.
That's a great point. And second, stay curious. Don't just accept the narratives you're given. Question everything, keep learning, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Right. The world is a fascinating and complex place, so embrace that complexity and never stop digging deeper.
Exactly. And finally, remember that at the end of the day, we're all in this together. We may have different views, different beliefs, different experiences, but we're all connected in some way.
Yeah, building a better future really depends on our ability to empathize with each other, understand different perspectives, and bridge those divides.
That's a perfect thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the news. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep those conversations going.